to Metro Talk. I'm Kent Scheffel. Thanks for joining us. Jim Schrader, the publisher of the Telegraph, is alongside. Welcome, Jim.
Hi, Kent.
They don't really know what they're doing today. And Pat Gowan, one of the editors with the Post-Dispatch, is here as well. Welcome, Pat.
I can't.
A little behind-the-scenes issue. Pat, a Madison County judge, is considering whether to reinstate the case that involved Philip Morris that resulted in a $10 billion verdict in Madison County. Attorney Stephen Tillery says the case should be reinstated because of some recent Supreme Court rulings. Bottom line is, should that case get a second life in Madison County?
Well, it's in 2003 when Judge Nicholas Byron ruled the $10.1 billion verdict in favor of the plaintiffs in a class action suit that said that Philip Morris was marketing low-tar cigarettes as though they were safer, knowing that they weren't. Byron decides this in a bench trial in 2003, and over the intervening 8 years, the Illinois Supreme Court eventually throws it out. The U.S. Supreme Court won't take the appeal. The U.S. Supreme Court rules in an unrelated case that the grounds by which the Illinois Supreme Court threw it out might not really be effective. Then eventually the 5th District Court of Appeals reinstated it, and Madison County ended up with it back. And the big question recently was, is there some way to just reinstate that verdict and let it ride, or will the judge rule to allow the trial to continue at all, or will the judge throw the trial out the window? My understanding is he said he's not going to reinstate the verdict straight up, so it's either going to be a new trial or thrown out the window. But this case has had a remarkable amount of life, and the life was built around the fact that the court ruled, eventually appeals court ruled, that, that the Federal Trade Commission had allowed the company to use those terms, and therefore that was not actionable. But later the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in an unrelated case that they were not allowed to use those terms. The tobacco industry was not allowed by the FTC to do this, which turned it on its ear. And it was on that basis that this thing came back to life. It's taken us now 9 years to get from the verdict to where we are, and I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking about this 9 years from now.
Would it have this long of a life if it weren't for so many dollars?
I don't know. Well, no. No one would go through all this if there was not potentially so much money at stake. And the two things that made this remarkable in the first place were that the verdict was against tobacco, when tobacco generally wins product lawsuits, and the amount of money, which was unprecedented, almost in jurisprudence, $10.1 billion across a class. It probably had a lot of people, but it's still a large amount of money.
Jim, should the case get a second life in Madison County?
Should it? In my opinion, no, it shouldn't. Will it? I suspect that it may. If we were to go back because of a more recent Supreme Court decision saying that the basis for the lawsuit, the basis for the award in the lawsuit had changed. I mean, in the original lawsuit, the basis was it was okay. The FTC said you could use light or low tar, and that implied better for you, even though they weren't. And then later on to say, no, the FTC didn't allow that, so that changes the rules. I mean, if we were to go back and retry everyone when laws change, which laws do change from time to time, that could set a very dangerous precedent. Or we could have awards cases where you could go back where the defendant may have served time and come back and try to sue a government saying, wait a minute, the law changed here, and if the trial was today, I wouldn't have been found guilty, or I might not have been found guilty because the rulings have now changed or the law has changed. The basis that I don't really understand in all of this, as Pat pointed out, was the Supreme Court coming back and saying the FTC did not allow cigarette makers, tobacco companies, to use the terms light or low tar, though they were all over all of the cigarette packages in those days, and still are, I guess, in some cases. I don't know, it's been a lot of years since I bought a pack of cigarettes, but those terms are still used. If they're saying that the Federal Trade Commission didn't say it was okay to use light, how could they put that on their packaging and not be shut down, not be forced to change their packaging. So the basis of that confuses me a lot. The fact that the Illinois Supreme Court struck down the verdict and the federal court said, we're not going to hear an appeal on this, to me, that says, case closed. So to me, the reinstatement of the verdict, as Pat points out, you just can't do that. You can't come back after the Supreme Court, one Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court, has thrown out the verdict and the federal Supreme Court refused to rehear it. You can't just say, well, but we think, the judgment should go against Philip Morris, so we're going to reinstate it. The only thing that I could possibly see doing would be a total retrial, which I don't think either side particularly wants necessarily, but in Madison County, and with some of the history that we have in Madison County, it wouldn't surprise me at all, as Pat pointed out, 9 years from now, we're talking about a trial against Philip Morris about light or low tar cigarettes and their health effects.
We need to take a break. We'll have more Metro Talk right after this.
One of the stranger elements, but...
Hi, I'm Audrey Lucchese, and I'm from Alton, Illinois. I love music, and that's why I came to Lewis & Clark. It's been an amazing experience here at Lewis & Clark, working with students that are so talented, coming from all over the area, and they work so hard to follow their dreams. The music faculty at Lewis & Clark they're fantastic, and they're there every step of the way to push you to follow your dreams. One of the unique opportunities that I have had at Lewis & Clark is being able to record my own music with a fellow student here. Being able to record our music has opened doors for us in the music industry. My long-term goal is to finish here at Lewis & Clark and then to transfer to a four-year school and finish my degree in music performance. I would recommend Lewis & Clark to another student because it is definitely a great place to get started and it can open so many doors for you.
Big dreams and good grades aren't enough to get into college. There are actual steps you need to take. Finding someone who can help is the first and most important. For the next steps, go to knowhowtogo.org.
Watching Metro Talk, I'm Kent Scheffel. Pat Gowan and Jim Schrader are here. Jim, Governor Quinn has killed gambling expansion in the state. Are you surprised by that fact?
Yes. In some ways I am a little surprised. Just due to the amount of money that we're talking that would have been, depending on your beliefs, either new money to the state or new economic development in 5 different areas of the state. This bill would have allowed 5 new casinos, 1 in the city of Chicago, 1 on the south side of Chicago, and 3 others. Also would have allowed slot machines at the 2 horse tracks in the state, which the current casino operators were against. And for that matter, current casino operators were against any expansion in gambling, potential being if you have one store getting all of the business and all of a sudden we build a new box store, we're going to split the business in half. I could see why the casinos were against it. Ostensibly, it would have saved the horse racing industry in the state of Illinois, which is... In our particular case, I think it's about 1,500 jobs at Fairmount City, which is, or Fairmount Park, which is a lot of jobs and a lot of economic development. I guess what I found strange about it was the governor's reasoning for killing it, or not signing it, which had already been passed by both houses. He said it lacked substantial legislation for ethics built into the bill, which he wanted political contributions by casino operators banned, made illegal. And he's, even in his statement, he said his two predecessor governors are both in jail because of a lack of ethics, and he wanted substantially more legislation built into this bill. There is a rider bill, by the way, that was passed that would have strengthened the ethical language in the bill, but it was a rider bill, so he would have had to sign the first bill allowing the expansion before he could act on the rider bill, which would have strengthened the ethical legislation that was in the bill. So it was all there, but he wanted it all in the same bill so he said he could act on it all at once and with one signature instead of two. I guess he's overworked in the office and can't sign two bills or something. He can only sign one. The thing kind of confuses me. It makes you wonder, as with most decisions by Governor Quinn, what's really on the table here, what's really on his plate. He doesn't seem to differ with gambling on a principle basis, because we have an act going in right now that was passed 3 years ago, which is going to allow slot machines at social clubs and restaurants and anybody else that wants to pay the licensing fee. That will mean 35% of the losses go to a local jurisdiction, a local city, municipality. 35% goes to the state. And then I think the balance goes to the operator of the machines. That was passed 3 years ago on Governor Quinn's watch, so he can't be against gambling per se. So I find it a little strange that the reasons given was due to ethical concerns. I personally don't have a problem with the idea of banning political contributions by casino operators, but that changes the rules, because certainly the existing casinos in the state of Illinois curried favor with legislators with different political contributions during the years. Most of them now, I think, contribute to candidates on both sides of the aisle, just trying to make sure that they cover all of the gamut there. I think this bill will be back in some way, shape, or form. It's not going to go away. A bill passed last year that the governor refused to sign. This year, another bill passed. He refused to sign. I suspect sometime next year we're going to have this similar discussion one more time.
Pat, Governor Quinn has killed the gambling expansion legislation. Are you surprised by that fact?
Well, if you look at it one way, I covered riverboat gambling as a beat when it started, when the first casino came on board, then the Alton Bell, and covered it on a statewide basis. And the state of Illinois was terrified of the mob. This is, after all, Illinois. It's got a rich history of corruption, and the people in charge then were terrified that if they didn't have this thing sealed off hermetically in every possible aspect, that somehow the unsavories would get involved in it. And to the best of my knowledge, it has remained a clean industry. No one's ever made an allegation I'm aware of that the mafia or anybody's running gambling in Illinois. So I can understand on that level a continued concern on the governor's part. He wants to be the first governor elected in Illinois since 1998 not to go to prison. Both of them, but by golly, it's a legacy. Now, you look at another way, You look at it another way. Quinn was never been a big money raiser. He's never been a pal of the moneyed people. He's always been a grassroots kind of guy. He got to be governor not by raising the $20 or $30 million it normally takes to do it, but by raising about $500,000 to run for lieutenant governor and letting the guy in front of him go to prison. He takes over the job. Then he's got the power of the incumbency and he wins it on his own. I think there's probably something in the back of the mind of populist Pat Quinn that keeps him from wanting to court too much the big money. Now, I'm becoming increasingly cynical in what I say. Here comes the more cynical side. He's trying to keep the people with money from influencing the legislature, influencing the governor, parenthetically, any more than it already does. Because when you veto this bill, it isn't just the people who want to expand that lose, it's the people who don't want to expand, the ones who have the current licenses, who win. Because they don't want to divide up that pie any more than they have to. So if you become increasingly more cynical, the spotlight then comes on the governor to say, well, who are you doing a favor for if you cancel this thing out? And I'm not really hearing anybody say much about that, but that veto's only come a couple of hours ago as we taped this show, so there'll be time for that. So I don't know which Pat Quinn's face is on this. Maybe all of them are, but it's an interesting thing. I don't think it's a surprise, despite support of the video poker gambling in taverns. Quinn has dragged his feet on other gambling expansion before, so maybe he's more philosophically against it than he says, but it's a very interesting development politically.
We need to take another break. We'll have more Metro Talk right after this.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Lewis and Clark Minute. Today we're going to be talking with Michelle Singley about the dental hygiene program.
Dental hygiene students learn a variety of treatment skills when they're enrolled in the program at Lewis and Clark. For example, students learn to take a thorough medical history, to perform a head and neck assessment, including an oral cancer screening, and to assess the gum tissue, teeth, and bone of their patients. The students also take dental x-rays, perform dental cleanings, place dental sealants to prevent cavities, and treat the patient's teeth with fluoride or fluoride varnish. Dental hygiene students also teach others to take good care of their teeth with oral hygiene aids such as brush and floss. Our Gina the giraffe puppet is one of the students' favorites. We take her out to the schools to teach the kids good oral habits. For more information about the dental hygiene program, call us at 468-4413 and you can meet Gina.
This has been your Lewis and Clark Minute.
I'm starving. What's for breakfast?
Guten Tag!
Johannes, Franz!
I bring you arts-enriched Raisinblams, fortified with increased test scores and creative problem-solving skills.
It's good!
And good for you.
Bobby? Susie?
Don't worry, that's just the power of the arts!
Feed your kids the arts. For 10 simple ways to learn how, visit AmericansForTheArts.org.
You're watching Metro Talk. I'm Kent Shuffle. Pat Gowan's here along with Jim Schrader. Pat, we were talking about Governor Quinn. You mentioned he's a grassroots kind of guy. Now he says he wants to do a grassroots campaign to try to get pension reform in Illinois. He says he's going to wait till after the 2 political conventions are over and then start appealing to the public to try to get pension reform. Will he be successful in this grassroots campaign?
Well, I don't know exactly what he's trying to do, and he says he's not going to tell us until mid-September exactly what he's trying to do. He's trying to get an $83 billion albatross off from around his neck. I know he's trying to do that. And part of it, I presume, will be to try to shift teacher pensions, henceforth downstate and suburban teacher pensions, to the local districts to pay, sort of like the way it's done in Chicago now. I imagine that sort of thing will be a part of it. Pat Quinn has had trouble getting a legislature to do much of anything about this, or so he says. There's a legislature of 118 people. It used to be 177, and the reason it's less than it used to be is because of the legislative cutback amendment that he was largely responsible for in 1980. He got the people to vote to cut the size of the Illinois General Assembly by 1/3, with attended cost saving and so forth. So he has a track record of success with this sort of thing. He also was an instrumental character in the Citizens Utility Board to represent consumers against utility rate hikes. That's still around after decades. So he's got success with this, and he did those things in the days before social media, before blogging, before Facebook, before the other ways that anyone has of reaching a large and mass audience and mobilizing them. So Quinn has a track record. It will be very interesting to see if you've got a governor essentially trying to run a major state policy by consensus bypassing the legislature. Could be a very interesting fall, but of course he's going to be fighting the political interest in the presidential race. He's going to be fighting the political interest in all the legislators up for re-election. So he may have trouble getting attention for this, and the more logical time in my mind to do it might be after the election, but we'll see.
Well, I want everybody to know that I'm a proud graduate of public schools, but I learned a little bit about math when I went through those public schools. The idea of pension reform, we can change the rules now on a go-forward basis. That part I understand. For anybody that comes into the program from whatever date legislation is passed and signed on a go-forward basis, we fund things differently. Where's the $83 billion going to come from, the black hole that we're already in? That's what I don't understand. That's the meaningful legislation that I keep waiting to hear out of Springfield. Is, okay, we can change the rules now that effective January the 1st of 2015, anybody that comes into the program, it's going to be a 401k or it's going to be an employee match. It's going to be some type of different pension system than what we've had in the past. But what's going to fix the $83 billion hole? If whatever, I think roughly half of that $83 billion is the downstate teachers and administrators, if I remember the numbers correctly. It's somewhere in that neighborhood. So if we shift that burden out of Springfield and onto the backs of the school districts in Alton, Bethalto, Edwardsville, wherever, all over downstate Illinois, that still doesn't fill the hole for upwards of $40 billion. It doesn't change your tax bite, and my tax bite, because Springfield is not going to say, well, you're paying so much into Springfield to cover these pensions in the past. We're now going to give those back to the Bethalto School Board or the Highland School Board or the Southwestern School Board so that they can cover the teachers' pensions. They want to use that money for something else. So ostensibly, you're raising taxes on the local level to carry forth the pension obligation, only we're going to do it at local tax dollars as opposed to state tax dollars. We still have the same hole. And we've seen I've seen no meaningful discussion of how we're going to pay off that $83 billion obligation. Moving it around from the left pocket to the right pocket or reforming the system on a go-forward basis does not make up for years of not making what was supposed to be the mandatory deposit into the pension program to keep it solvent. Right now, it's not solvent, and I haven't seen anybody say how we're going to fill that hole back up.
Now that may take decades to do, but may I draw on my public school experience in shop class to remind everyone, I guess from Quinn's point of view, that the logical thing to do is turn off the water to the broken pipe before you pump the basement. And I don't know whether he's got any basement pumping in mind and what he's talking about, but certainly he's got to get the flow stopped.
But I've seen no stomach for cutting spending in other places to redirect that into the obligations that should have been fulfilled for the last 15 years or so anyway, which is what got us into this mess. And all of the rabble-rousing and all of the Facebooks and tweets and all of these other, people standing up and saying, we have to reform pensions now. Nobody, I think, has the stomach to pump out the basement right now, which is to redirect monies from other accounts back into that pension obligation to get us solvent. Our bond rating is the worst in the United States for the state of Illinois. And Moody's is talking about reducing that even more so, that the state of Illinois will be better off getting payday loans at 22% interest because they can't borrow money from anybody else. I don't know what is going to fix the backlog of problems, even if we fix the go forward problem.
I have to wonder if the unspoken reality in Springfield for a long time has not been that we will stall until the economy turns around, and then that rising tide will lift this boat too. And they're waiting, and then part of what happens is you run into an election year where there's simply no will to do anything that's going to either mess with benefits or raise any kind of taxes in an election year. The question in my mind, come the winter, come to turn into the year 2013, is will someone finally get serious about this in Springfield then, or will they continue to stall until we start running into the next election year?
Well, after November 7th of this year, we've got an election coming up in 2 more years. We've got an election coming up in every 2 years of some type or another.
This is the worst kind of election in a way, because all the legislators are up because of the redistricting.
Right.
So this is the only time in 10 years when everybody runs for re-election. House members run every election, but the Senate members run every other, except everybody goes because this is the decennial redistricting. So this is the worst possible election for them to act on the eve of. Of course, in 2 years, half of them will be up, all of the House and half the Senate, and the governor.
And here we go again.
But I also think the governor's race is going to turn up the heat on the burners enough that certainly Quinn will have to be a stronger leader.
But if any of the candidates announced so far, or any of the candidates that are up for election in November, and we've all seen lots of their news releases and starting to see some of their TV commercials and their campaign literature, has anybody stepped forward and saying, I've got a plan to fix the pension problem in the state of Illinois?
Well, when you talk about the will of the lawmakers, some of the counties in Illinois have limits on the amount of property taxes that can be imposed. So are you as a lawmaker willing to say to those counties, I know you voted for that property tax limit, but we need to shift pension costs to your county, to your school districts, so we're going to override your vote?
Well, look at what we've just gone on with some area school districts. Edwardsville being the biggest, because it's the biggest school district in Madison County, have had to cut $12 million out of their budget over the past 2 years because the state is supposed to be paying about $7,000 per student, and what they've received the last 2 years is $860 per student, less than $1,000. The hole's getting deeper.
That's going to do it for this round of Metro Talk. Thanks for being with us. Pat Gowan, one of the editors with the Post-Dispatch, has been here, along with Jim Schrader, the publisher of the Telegraph. I'm Kent Shuffle. We'll see you next time.